I declare my interest as a member of the National Union of Journalists and as a former presenter of BBC Radio 4's Week in Westminster. And it's radio I'd like to ask you about, particularly the closure of BBC Arabic and BBC Persian radio services. Now, Mr. Monroe, you talked about people living in the rubble of Gaza right now and not worrying about the access to a data package, but they do have access to radio services. When we had Fiona Crack of the World Service before our committee, we asked her about the closure of the Arabic radio service, and she said that with hindsight, it does not feel like a good decision. How can you make sure you make good decisions in future on this kind of subject?
Yeah, thank you for raising that, because first of all, I agree with Fiona. You won't be surprised to hear. I don't think that decision stood the test of time. That's not to say that the decision was taken with anything other than good motives at the time against extreme financial pressures. That savings round amounted to about £28.5 million of annual savings taken out of the World Service in 2022. So some difficult decisions had to be taken. As I've just explained in previous answers, we've sprung up radio services for Syria and some radio output for Gaza and Sudan because we were lacking the continuing platform that Arabic radio gave us. To answer your question about avoiding future decisions of that sort, I'd make 2 points. The first is that we have clearly learnt a lesson about the withdrawal from linear services where digital maturity isn't as established as we would like to be. I think it's important that we're honest about that and not to try to rewrite history. We would be in a different position if digital maturity was as established as we hoped it would be, but we're not. And that's clear. The second point is that part of the funding ask, to be blunt, is that we're not in this dilemma again. And £28.5 million out of the budget as it then was 3 years ago nearly, was a significant percentage that we had to pull out because it was the beginning of the licence freeze period. So the whole of the BBC, not just the World Service, but everybody, was asked to reduce their operating expenditure. Across the BBC, a lot of very difficult decisions were made, and it's the nature of any change programme that if you bring in dozens of changes, some of them are going to be things that you, with hindsight, don't think stood the test of time. And I think that's firmly where I am on Arabic radio.
One of the consequences of really squeezing this budget so hard is this thing we talked about, this area we talked about earlier, which is just simply linear transition. So if you're left behind in digital, the future looks bleak. But meanwhile, if you can't sustain your linear, so sometimes, frankly, all organisations and media organisations are struggling with this, but just that pace of change and getting that balance right, and with the hindsight of events as well, I think we reflect on that as my colleagues say, and say, with the hindsight, we kept keeping that linear service going for longer.
Can I ask you, Director General, was the FCDO made aware beforehand of that decision to withdraw radio services from BBC Arabic?
I think
it's our normal. I wasn't in the management team at the time, but it's our normal practice to inform. But it's not actually an FCDO decision. It doesn't require FCDO sign-off because it's not the closure of a language service as such. It's the movement of one platform to another. My general approach to government is not to take government by surprise with these decisions, because I don't think that's fair. They're a major funder of the World Service. We'd like them to be a bigger funder of the World Service, as we just discussed. But I wasn't in the room for that particular...
Yeah, I just have to look back. My instinct would be, and is we tend to be appropriately sharing the implications of financial settlements. So, we just need to go and do that.
Well, notwithstanding your editorial independence, it'd be interesting if you could write to us to let us know whether or not there was any feedback from the government about anticipation that decision and the impact of it. Whether there was any decision within government to say, you've consulted us, we think it's a bad idea, or actually go ahead, we think it's borderline one.
We'll clarify that for you.